So I had a little bit of bad luck. The transmission on this thing has got to come out, and I'm about to do a bunch of other work to it. Let me give you a little backstory. When I first built this truck back in 2009, somewhere around there, 2010, I used a Mazda M5 R2 transmission, I think, behind the 4-cylinder Cummins. And those transmissions are definitely not beefy enough. I ended up blowing it up pretty quickly. They have a good gear spread though for the diesel, but they are not strong. So what I ended up doing was putting a low mile used ZF5 in it and ran that for years. And in, let's see, 2015, I ended up using this truck to go pick up a 57 Willys FC 170. Nice old Jeep that I ended up selling, but bought that thing and hauled it back from Oregon and ended up blowing up the clutch. Actually, I have it over here. So this was the clutch that was in it, or the friction disc that was in it. It doesn't look bad, but what happened was the rivets that hold this splined piece right in the middle here became disconnected from the rest of this friction disc. So this spun freely from the rest of it, and I had no more forward momentum. So figured that out on the side of the road, was able to get it to a shop, and that shop ended up replacing the clutch for me. But when they pulled that low mile ZF5 out of the truck, they broke the tail housing, and that transmission's around here somewhere. I don't remember where I put it, but they broke the tail housing. So what I ended up having to do is call a junkyard. I ended up getting another ZF5 with good housing and put it in the truck. Well, that transmission had probably 400,000 miles on it. Who knows? And I always said the next time I pull out the transmission, I'm going to just get a new one, because that thing had no synchros left in it and really was not working very well. Well, on the small block Ford ZF5 transmissions, the slave cylinder is up in the bell housing, and I don't know if you can see all that fluid. There is brake fluid. Well, the slave cylinder blew up, so I got to put a new transmission in it. And rather than put another small block ZF5 with an internal slave cylinder, I am going to a big block, or a diesel big block bell housing. So, new adapter plate, new flywheel, new clutch, all the hydraulics, external slave cylinder, and finally the new transmission. So, kind of a long explanation, but with all these modifications now, this has got a better gear split than the gas transmission. Higher torque rating. This is a ZF547, so it's a 470 foot-pound torque rating. And the clutch is rated for 750 foot-pounds, where the small block Ford clutches are not even close to that. So basically, I'm upgrading everything. Let's get to work. Alright, got the transfer case out, drive shafts out, making some good progress. One thing I didn't show before was exactly what I got. So this is the adapter plate for a ZF5 to Cummins. It's designed for a Powerstroke transmission. to bolt up to the Cummins, and I got it from Diesel Conversion Specialists. They work with Southbend, and Southbend Clutch, they make the flywheel, the conversion flywheel, which is right there. That's a very heavy flywheel, as you would imagine. Some little parts. And in here is the clutch and pressure plate for a Powerstroke. It's meant for factory power ratings, but Southbend claims that this is rated for 700 and something, 750 I think foot-pounds and like 350 horsepower, which is way more than this 4-cylinder Cummins makes. Right now, I don't think I've ever showed the dyno charts, but I did have this engine on a dyno, and it made 184 horsepower I think to the wheels and 485 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty healthy. In here, this kit right here, this adapter plate is designed to work with a 6-liter starter, but I called up the guys over at Diesel Conversion Specialists, and they said to use a starter out of a 6.4. It's more powerful and will bolt right up. So 6.4 starter, and in here we got transmission mount and clutch fork. Also, I'm going to a bigger bore master cylinder. I think the exhaust is going to work fine, but might have to make a few little modifications. Not sure yet. Alright, the transmission's out. Kind of stinks that you have to pull it to change the clutch hydraulics, but that's one thing I'm avoiding with these new parts. This is all an external unit for the clutch. Well, we're finally in the reassembly stage. I'm sorry, I'm bad at documenting stuff, but at least I got a new camera. So, the rear main seal was leaking after I got everything apart, so that rear main seal has now been installed. There are plenty of videos on YouTube. It's a pretty easy deal, it's just hard to get to. So, first thing to go on is going to be the adapter plate and the starter, flywheel, clutch. We'll get all that in. I can't put in the transmission yet because I am still waiting on some parts, or actually one part. This little rubber boot is all torn and caused a major oil leak in on the last transmission. That's all rear main seal oil in there. While the transfer case is out, I put new seals in it, so that's all set and ready to go. Alright, the adapter plate is now in, torqued down. So is the starter. Anybody doing any work on these Cummins engines, make sure you put Loctite on everything. Blue Loctite and all the aluminum parts. Red Loctite that goes into any cast iron or steel. This starter is actually really easy to wire up. I wasn't sure what the wiring was going to be, but it's just I still have to tidy everything up. But you have one trigger wire and then the main battery cable. So it's just 2 wires. It's the same wiring setup as the old starter, so that's real convenient. Flywheel is going to go on next along with the clutch, and I guess I'll be done for the day. Alright, it's a few days later. The weather has turned from nice and warm and sunny to cold, damp, and snowy. Lucky for me. And the reason why I had to wait so long is because of this little boot right here. It took about a week to get it. The other one was torn up pretty good, which caused the leak on the transmission from the top down. So now it's time to put it all back in. Some things that I have noticed. First off, the adapter plate is moving the engine, or I'm sorry, moving the transmission forward compared to the last one by about 3/4 of an inch, I think, somewhere around there. And then also, this transmission is actually a little bit shorter than the other one for some reason. I don't know why, but the case is a little over 2 inches shorter right here on the tail housing. The shifter, or the brackets for the transfer case shifter, are in the same place along with the shifter compared to the bell housing, so that doesn't change, except it's going to move 3/4 of an inch forward. But what is going to change is I'm going to have to cut down this bracket here, because the distance between the transfer case and here is about a little over 2 inches shorter. So yeah, there's going to be some changes there. I'm going to have to redesign my shifter for the transfer case. The floor is clearanced enough, it should be fine as far as moving the shifter a little bit forward. The drive shafts are also going to have to be changed. The rear one's going to have to be longer by probably about 3 inches, and the front one is going to have to be cut down by probably about 3 inches. But we'll take measurements and everything once that's all in place. And also, this cross member for the transmission is going to have to change, which it's been on my list to take it out, because I really don't like the way I designed this. I kind of just threw it together, and I kind of wish I did some things differently, so I'm going to do those things differently. Alright, now I've done a lot of transmissions before, mostly in big rigs and big 10-wheeler dump trucks, so we'll see. I pulled this transmission out like 3 or 4 times now, so it's hit or miss. Sometimes it goes back together smooth, other times not so much. Got new parts, see how it all goes. Well, I don't know if this is a good sign or a bad sign, but I have never put together an engine and transmission as quickly as I just did. It slid together the first push. I just twisted the output shaft of the transmission, and it just lined right up and slid right in. Everything's engaged, so I'll start bolting it up and hopefully it works. Hopefully it's the last time. Hopefully that's the last time it comes out for a long time. Alright, my next step is to get this cross member cut apart and mocked up. Right now I have the transmission jack holding the engine at the proper angle. So what I'll do is I'll cut these side pieces off, bolt them up, cut this piece off, and build a framework to this to the sides. Mock everything up, tack it together, drop it down, and then weld it up solid. So let's get cutting. Here are the pieces that I need. Cleaned them up a little bit, but I anticipate this will be a lot lighter, a lot more simple, and it'll be plenty strong. Just ate a quick lunch. I had to think for a second. So the way I want to do this cross member the exhaust system is going to be in the way. So what I'm going to do is build the exhaust system around the cross member, not the other way around. So I'll just cut it right here, clearance it, build the cross member the way I want, and then we'll redo the exhaust. It shouldn't be that bad. I might have to get a straight piece and get rid of this bend. Don't know if I have a straight piece. I might. Alright, underneath now. Hopefully there's enough light. See, we got the pieces that I cut off right here and right here, and then a piece of 1-inch square tubing with 3/16 wall. Basically what I'm going to do is tack all this in place right here. Basically what I'm going to do is tack all that up in place. Once it's out, it's going to be strengthened and gusseted to be able to hold all the weight. This piece has been test fit, tacked, test fit again, now welded, and test fit again. Fits good. So now I'm basically going to take this simple design here and beef it up with some more square tubing, some gusseting, and some plating on the bottom. But this transmission mount has held the entire weight of the engine. Transmission didn't even flex. It's pretty thick material, so I imagine it'll be more than enough, especially after I gusset and strengthen it. Little welder does pretty good, although this is maxing it out, so taking it slow. Try not to burn this thing out. So got my cross member built. It's all 3/16 inch steel, and be plenty for what I'm doing. The transmission and transfer case are back in. Everything bolted up good. So because this tail housing is shorter, I gotta measure for new drive shafts. So the transfer case is so much further forward. Gotta hook up the speedometer cable, make new shifter linkage because of that shorter tail housing. I still got to do all the clutch hydraulics and everything. You can see right there. It's always nice when the sun comes out. So I'm on to exhaust already. Welded on a new flange. It's actually my old flange. The flange that I cut off was just a cheap stamped piece, and it leaked real bad right at the turbo. So transmission transfer case is in. Like I said before, drive shafts are measured. My custom transfer case linkage up here is now more custom. All I had to do was shorten one rod and everything works as it should. So that's all done now. Things I have left to do are still get the clutch master cylinder, slave cylinder hooked up. It's one of the pre-bled deals, so all I have to do is bolt it up and it should be fine. The drive shaft is in, well, the rear drive shaft. I got oil in the transmission transfer case. Everything's tied up enough for right now, and clutch hydraulics are in. What I'm going to attempt to do now is move it under its own power for the first time. Well, that's a success. Grabbed a little harder than I was expecting. Clutch feel is a little different. The starter definitely sounds different and spins it a lot faster. Go take it for a test drive, make sure it goes through all the gears. Okay, the truck is back together. Running and driving just about is the best it ever has. So let's go for a little spin and you can see the gear split. My tachometer is not working right now because I don't have a port to plug it in, the Hall effect sensor, so I'll have to work on that. Inside, really nothing has changed. The clutch is a little stiffer than before. It engages at a different point than before. The shifters are essentially in the same spot. The front shifter moved forward a little bit. You can see kind of where the old hole was. The vinyl floor doesn't quite match up there, but oh well. Truck starts a lot better than it did with the old starter. This starter, I guess, has a lot more power, spins the engine a lot faster. Alright, let's give this a shot. So, about right there is where it starts gripping, so a little less than halfway up. Belt's squealing a little bit because I hosed down underneath. There's so much dust on the truck and under the hood from all the metal cutting and fabrication, so film and shift with one hand.